Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Welcome to Dr. J's After Dark. Just put my son down to bed, so gonna answer some of your questions, engage in a little conversation. Any topics on your mind, feel free and let me know. Ooh, I got a little reverb going here. Apologize for that. Man. One sec, technical difficulties. Apologize for that. All right, cool. Just killed it. All right, we are ready to dive in. So what is going on tonight? What has happened in the world of natural medicine and health? Love to see where your questions are at. Let's dive in. Okay, off the bat here, first one. Since solid-based organism probiotics are better tolerated in lactobacillus probiotic, what are some merits of starting with a lactobifidal? Why not people start with SBO directly? So when you say SBO, do you mean okay, solid-based organisms. Okay, so I'm not sure what you're talking about regarding just starting before making diet changes, before killing gut microbes. What's the underlying cause of that? Typically, people that have SIBO or small intestine bacterial overgrowth, a lot of times they may not be able to tolerate probiotics because they can ferment and create gas and bloating and can affect motility. So sometimes we have to, one, do some clearing, do some killing, starve out some of the not so nice bacteria. And we may even have to add in some soil or spore-based organisms that may not produce D-lactate as well. So it just really depends on what's going on. Matt writes in, what's your thoughts on being a fat burner? It seems that the keto community says if any carbs are used, then you are still a sugar burner and cannot be in keto. It's never an all or nothing. It's just, what are you primarily burning, right? The goal is that you're primarily burning fat for fuel. By keeping carbohydrate low, you reduce the stimulus of insulin. And when insulin's high, if you look at any biochemistry textbook, you're going to see high amounts of insulin are going to decrease free fatty acid synthesis. High insulin, your body is taking carbs and it is shunting carbs into the muscle, and it is going to be converting that to fat if it's not burned. So you become a sugar burner, and then you essentially, it's hard to tap into the fat that you have. And then if you're not doing lots of exercise, that sugar then gets converted into fat. So that's how it works. And in general, it was a great podcast the other night with Joe Rogan, where it was, I think, Gary Taubes and Stefan Guillenet, and they had a big debate about this. I spent 3 hours watching the whole thing. But essentially, it's kind of a relative thing. So the more you're a sugar burner, the more insulin is surging and the more you are burning sugar for fuel. And typically you're eating a lot, you're having lots of cravings, and we eat more fat, we eat more protein, we become more of a sugar burner. So Matt writes, I only want 30 grams of carbs at night, fat, greens, proteins, otherwise all day. Can you be both a sugar burner and a fat burner? Yeah. I mean, it just depends too. Like some people, based on their activity levels, they can totally be a fat burner, right? Meaning they're spitting out ketones in their urine or in their blood at 100 grams or 200 grams of carbohydrate. So people that are very insulin resistant may have to be lower. And then ones that are, more insulin sensitive, that can handle more carbs, they may be spitting out ketones at 50, 100, 150. And also depends on activity too, right? Because the more muscle you have, muscle becomes a reservoir for carbohydrate. So the more muscle you have, the more storage for carbs. So then it doesn't have to get put into your fat cell. And the more you're actively burning or walking or doing movements or lifting, you're going to be basically squeezing your muscles, squeezing that sponge, wringing it out, and then it creates more space for more glucose in the future. So muscle is a huge way to, adding muscle is a huge way to keep yourself more insulin sensitive. All right, awesome. Great questions, y'all. All right. Amadar Karandai, 40 days of G-Ector 3 Silver, finally got over in 6 months. Can't believe it's finally over. Brave through 6 months of reactions and sensitivities with G-Ector 3. We should never go that long. 6 months is a very long time, number one. And number two, you should always kind of dial the dose in so you're not having a whole bunch of negative reactions. If you're just stressing out your detox and your lymph and your immune system, that's not good. You're better off dialing back and then tapering it in, titrating in. Gabe writes in, Dr. J, assuming you are preparing an emergency kit for your family, what kind of food would you consider having, mostly if some of it has to be canned? Well, I mean, honestly, you can have canned vegetables, canned green beans. I think just a big old vat of coconut oil, a big vat of amino acids, because that's going to be good, right? You have aminos, you have fats, you have water, and that's probably going to be your best bet. Minerals, you can always rely on some vitamins, vitamin packs. You can always rely on some green juice. But in general, probably amino acids, fats, water, and those would probably be your best bet. Lisa writes in, my friend experienced the most minor of cramps on his right side, front of his body. From time to time, he feels like there's a bend in his intestines. Can that happen to someone? Well, it depends what the cause is. There could be an infection, a parasite in there that's creating inflammation. It depends when it's happening. But when I see cramps like that, I always look at potential potassium, magnesium, and just generalized minerals, because if we don't have adequate amounts, that could be a definite stressor and could cause cramping for sure. So that's the first thing you should be diving in on there. Hey, Jeff. Jeff writes in, I ordered GI 4 and 6, been losing a lot of weight, too much upper burping and heaviness, feeling and nausea with the SIBO and infections. I have caused all this discomfort. So first things first is I would make sure you're tapering into the herbs. You have a tendency, Jeff, of going all the way and not tapering it in. So make sure you're tapering it in. You're not going too much and creating too much die-off. I know you took those antibiotics, which I think really set you back and dropped a huge bomb in your gut. So I think you have to get the inflammation down and then titrate those guys in slowly. And then also make sure you're doing it with food so it's not so potent. Okay. K Gupta writes in, if I want to test for candida and dysbiosis, should I pick up a GI map or an organic test? I can only afford one. I would look at the GI map first, because it's going to look at a lot more aspects of the gut. I mean, the organics is nice because the urine markers for gut bacteria or yeast can be nice, but I would look at the GI map first. Paul writes in, I live in a moldy house and moving within the next 3 months. What are the best supplements to take remedy while living in a moldy conditions? I would say glutathione will be number one. You could do some binders, some bentonite clay, some activated charcoal. You could also do some pectosol. Those would be some really good compounds there. Hold on. What do you want? This guy's coming to say hi to me during my filming over here. If you hear him in the background, this is Dexter. Say hi, Dexter. All right. Jeff writes in, K Gupta, my test was GI map. It shows everything. Good. Yep, I agree. Matt writes in, I personally find the organics good marker for overall health, though, especially neurotransmitters, mitochondria. Yep, I think it's really good too. Hey, Grace, hope you're doing well. I'm doing a quick gut kill with some oil of oregano, maybe 3 days or so, activated charcoal at night. Plan to bring in some probiotics afterwards. Is that okay? Yes, that's totally good. I think that's awesome. Great idea. Colin writes in, thoughts on the health coach field, any programs you would suggest to follow to become a certified for someone interested in coaching, like Primal Health certification by Mark Sisson? Yeah, I think that certification is probably good. I mean, I've met Mark a handful of times. He has a lot of good information and really good stuff. I mean, the functional medicine stuff will be missing, but I mean, you'll have the diet and the lifestyle component, which is huge for a lot of people. So getting that 100% dialed in. Paul Chek has a good kind of baseline one, HLC, holistic lifestyle coach. And then there are various functional medicine programs. I'll be coming out with one really soon. I'm not sure who it'll be for, if it's practitioners or not, but it's going to provide a lot of the foundational information. A lot of people in the functional medicine field, they just get too didactic, too classroom, too research-based. And it's like, hey, where's the application? I just want to get people better fast, right? So it's like, what are the things you got to do and being able to work with patients? Because when people are sick for a long time, you really got to communicate. You got to really make sure they're supported along the way. And that type of coaching is really important. But the foundational stuff that you'll learn from Primal Health more than likely will be great. Chronic Conditions writes in, can digestive enzymes cause bloating when too much dysbiosis is present? I mean, it's possible. I mean, anything's possible, but I would always start low and taper up. So if you have an issue, you'll notice that as the dose goes higher. Paul writes in, for adrenal fatigue, would preg and DHEA or adrenal boost be more beneficial to increase energy? Yeah, both. Exactly, they would. Now, if we see lower cortisol, adding those in for sure would be super helpful. Creatively Created writes in, is remineralizing teeth possible? If so, what do you recommend? Yes, it's definitely possible. Silica is great. Collagen, peptide is going to be excellent. Vitamin A and vitamin K2 is going to be great. Feel free to check out Rami Nagel's book on cavities. The same protocols in there for building back teeth or building back cavities is what I would use there too. Also, listen to my podcast with Jason Lind last year. He wrote the book, The Dental Diet, and we had a good interview and we talked about some of this. Amelia writes in, hey, Amelia, going on travel next week. Any tips for keeping the immune system up? Any tips for best supplements? Yeah, I did a whole podcast on traveling, but in general, it depends where. If you're going to the United States, and it's going to be, safe food, it's not that big of a deal. Enzymes, HCl, some activated charcoal, maybe some vitamin C or some NAC if you're going to be drinking alcohol. If you're going outside of the country, I always recommend bringing at least a full bottle of probiotics and some GI Clear 4 and 5, oil of oregano, and then, really good, strong anti-parasitic herbs. So if you do get an infection, you're not having to run to the ER. You're not having to drop down a whole bunch of antibiotics. Matt writes in, hey, Matt, hope you're doing good. Can a GI map or O test tell you if you have mold or mycotoxins or imply it? Well, if you see a lot of candida, I mean, that is obviously a fungus, right? And mold's a type of fungus. But the O test, or I should say the Great Plains Labs, has a mycotoxin mold panel, a urinary mold test. That's nice. You can get some really good inferences from that. But then how do you figure out where it is? So I use a lot more of the plate testing to figure out where it's coming from, whether it's house or an office or different rooms in the house. I just done a whole bunch of podcasts on mold remediation and how to do it, cheaply, effectively, how to get to the root cause. Take a look at that podcast for more information on how to actually address it. Amelia writes in, I know you received one of my test results back, GI map. Is there a way to find out what the results are before the next phone call or follow up in April? Yeah, just email my office. And if you know it's in, just let them know that I approve you to release it. Lisa writes in, you're welcome, Dr. J. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Lisa. Paul writes in, is Quicksilver, liposomal glutathione the best? It's good. Quicksilver through Designs for Health is good. Liposomal glutathione, DFH, Quicksilver. And then also, I would say ReadyZorb makes one. And then also one more company, it'll hit me. But yeah, those are about 4 or 5 different companies. RNA Research, and they make a zeolite product. But yeah, that's it. T-Bone writes in, any advice on alternative day fasting? Can it be used to kill the gut abnormally? I think fasting is great. I like intermittent fasting. Just make sure hormonally you're good, blood sugar, you're good, energy, you're good. I like it. It can be great. If you have a lot of female hormones or a lot of energy issues, it may not be the best. So make sure you're in a good place before you do it. Do you take your pets to the office? Yes. Well, I'm in my home office right now in my basement. So Dexter has a little bit of a peeing problem. So he's relegated to the basement for right now. We just put in waterproof professional vinyl. So it's like totally waterproof. And that way, if he pees on it, he's not going to affect any of my nicer hardwoods upstairs. Paul writes in, can H-Pylori reinfect you if you haven't changed your toothbrush head? Possibly. I mean, it depends, right? A lot of the toothpaste people use these days tend to have antimicrobials in it. I use Revitin, which has a lot of tangerine and citrus oils, which would be anti-H-Pylori. So, I mean, it just depends, but I think rinsing it out good, dip it in some hydrogen peroxide, 3% for a minute or so, that'll kill a lot of it. And just use a really good toothpaste that'll have good antimicrobial effects. Amelia writes in, recommend a good green powder. I'm allergic to carrots and apples. Email my office. I think I may have a couple. I forget the names though right now. Great question though. Michael Green, been on a keto protocol. Anytime I eat a carb, it seems like a war goes on in my gut. What could it be? What kind of carbs? Are we talking vegetables, fruit, starches? It could be some bacterial overgrowth. It could be a yeast overgrowth too. So a little more info would help. True Blue Beth, you skipped my question. What was your question? You're going to have to repeat your question. It's hard to go scroll back up and find it. Amelia, you're welcome. Jeff writes in, how do I take the L-glutamine powder? Yeah, just do 1 teaspoon of it in water and then just drink it. That'll be super helpful. And will this brain fog and headache go away because I've cut out all the junk food out of my diet? Well, how long has it been? So I'd make sure all the junk food's gone. I'd get the L-glutamine in there and make sure your food's really good. We talked about kind of starting off on an intro SCD. So like GAPS, protein sources in a soup, carrots, maybe some celery. Keep it really simple. Keep it easy. Paul writes in, if I fast until in morning, and have anxiety and can't focus, is that a sign of adrenal fatigue? So does that mean you're intermittent fasting? So you're, obviously you haven't eaten all night and then you're skipping breakfast in the morning. Is that what you're doing? Yeah. If you're having those kind of issues, that definitely tells me blood sugar and adrenal for sure. 100%. So make sure you cut that out or just don't do it every day, right? That could be super helpful. All right. Any questions here on Facebook? Let me know. Giving some Facebook love here. All right. All right. Yeah. So a couple things here on the Joe Rogan debate. Definitely take a look at it. Gary Taubes and Stefan Guyenet, really interesting conversation. Stefan Guyenet is kind of like a brain guy, kind of like the brain controls the set point and highly palatable food tends to, essentially increase your desire for calories, where Gary's all about insulin. I tend to follow the insulin hypothesis because insulin is a fat storing hormone. It also helps get amino acids into your muscles too, right? Lots of bodybuilders use insulin as well. The difference is when you have lots of muscle and you're doing lots of exercise, resistance or insulin resistance isn't really a problem. The problem is a lot of people have insulin resistance, and insulin, I see it. I watch people's blood sugars go up. We do functional glucose tolerance testing where we take a fasting glucose, a 1, 2, and a 3 hour, and we see that out of balance. I'll run fasting insulin as well. And you can get some great data on what's happening. And typically, as I see insulin improve and we see functional glucose tolerance improve, weight almost always improves. And that's basically what's happening on a ketogenic diet. You're shifting fuel sources. So glucose goes down, you're relying more on ketones. Your brain only needs about 20 grams of glucose anyway. So I tend to find insulin is really a key component to everything, where leptin may be a problem. Yeah, but leptin resistance and insulin resistance tend to be connected. So if we have problems with insulin, we probably have problems with leptin. And leptin, of course, connects with ghrelin, and ghrelin signals your bodies whether you're hungry or not, right? Ghrelin means your stomach's growling, you're hungry. Increased leptin, that's like your body wanting more food. Increased ghrelin, that increases appetite. So different foods have different satiating signals as well. So protein stimulates all kinds of things like peptide YY and cholecystokinin and adiponectin. So you can feel satiated when you eat protein and typically fat, because they're connected, unless you're doing like a protein powder or a very lean protein source like maybe rabbit or deer, right? So you get good satiation with proteins and fats. And then, of course, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. So the nutrients that are in carbs aren't important. When you get some glucose, maybe if they're vegetables, you get a lot of nutrients and not a lot of sugar. But protein does have 9 core amino acids your body can't make. And then, of course, really good fats. Every cell in your body has a lipid bilayer, which is really important for cell membrane health. Mo writes in, can your body stop producing digestive enzymes if you overeat the same food? Well, if you create sympathetic stress, if you create inflammation and stress in your body, part of the fight or flight response will be to decrease stomach acid. And with lower stomach acid, we're going to see lower enzyme levels. So yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Any good books lately? I mean, I don't read a ton of books, honestly. I tend to read summaries, because when you write a book, you see most of books are just fluff. They're like 10 pages that are basically extrapolated out into 300 pages. So I tend to go after summaries. So I look at a lot of summaries so I can just digest a book in 20 or 30 minutes versus go 6 or 7 hours. So yeah, books are tough. GetAbstract.com, InstaRead, Blink. These are all services that I use so I can digest information faster. Creatively Created, is there a way to boost digestive enzymes naturally? Do you have to supplement forever? Well, just getting your hydrochloric acid levels up, just getting your parasympathetic nervous system up. So breathing through the nose, especially big belly extension down below. Also, I would just say gratitude, being in a state of gratitude and thankful, that gets the parasympathetics going. You can just do some internal breathing and doing a walking meditation where you think about things that are great in your life that you're happy about, and then just breathe through the nose. Let the belly go to the diaphragm. That's going to be really helpful for activating your parasympathetics. Have you heard of glutagenics, and what do you think of them? I forget what that is. I mean, I've heard of that before, but I need more info. Michael Green writes in, the example of a carb is the carbs in almond butter with maybe 8 carbs and less than 2 grams of sugar, 1 tablespoon, and my gut immediately battles. So you're saying the carbs that are in almond butter? I mean, the carbs that are in almond butter are pretty negligible. If you subtract the fiber, there's probably only just a few grams. But I mean, are you saying that you're having these reactions to nuts? So if you're having it to nuts, that could be an allergen for sure. I would think it'd be really hard to know if it was the carbs in the almond butter. I would probably lean on it just being the almond butter itself your body's having an allergic reaction to. Chronic Condition writes in, if thyroid disease are 50 to 90% autoimmune in nature, are the rest you mean genetic? Not necessarily. You have a genetic predisposition to autoimmune condition, right? Like there is that for sure. And then what are the epigenetic triggers, right? People talk about genetic this, genetic that. It doesn't make a difference, because it's what are the epigenetic triggers? That's all I care about. Like if you have the BRCA 1 or 2 gene for breast cancer, okay, great. What are the epigenetic triggers? Is having an imbalance of estrogen a trigger, right? Is inflammation or gluten sensitivity a trigger? Is environmental chemicals, xenoestrogens a trigger, right? Stress, cortisol, what are the triggers so we can control the epigenetics? And then that allows the genes to have a decreased chance of expressing, right? Genotype are the genes that you're born with. The phenotype is the physical expression of those genes. How did I get created? How did I get interested in functional medicine? That's a great story. So I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon for a long time, and I worked in the surgical field, and I saw lots of people getting cut open all the time. And I saw lots of diabetics getting cut open, and I would be the person that would hold their limbs, wrap them up, and bring them down to the morgue. And no one freaking cared about the root cause. They're just like, let's just tie off the arteries. Let's pull out our surgical saw it out, wrap up the leg, and we're done. And these same doctors would be outside in the butt hut afterwards, what we call it, maybe smoking their cigarettes. And I'd bring up conversations about like, hey, that was crazy. Like, how can we prevent it? And they just weren't interested. They're not educated in nutrition or supplementation. They're just educated in surgeons, or educated in maybe a little bit on the med side and then cutting. That's it. So they're not really concerned with that. And I always wanted to get on the backside of it and prevent these things from happening. So when you see, the bad and ugly, so to speak, on conventional medicine, it really causes you to go upstream and want to figure out a solution to these problems. What do I want to look for when purchasing glutathione? Well, if you need something, Amelia, let me know. I have accounts with all the best companies. So if you need glutathione, just email my office and we'll make sure you get the best, okay? But what to look for, you just have to know what companies are the best. All right, excellent. Paul writes in, certain foods I eat give me very stinky gas. What is it and how do I cure it? It depends what the foods are. Is there a common thread between the foods? Like carbohydrate? Is it a certain food that may be more hyperallergenic? Are you eating enough enzymes and acids? What's the frequency? I would look at what the common thread is and see if we can connect the dots better. Low Heat writes in, how much time does it take to get gut health and bone health completely back and stronger than ever for a person with an autoimmune organic keto diet? It's a great question. It depends how long you've been sick for. Also depends on how much infection there is either too. If we had a lot of infections and you've been sick for a long time, it may take 2 years. It may take 6 months. So I would say between that 2 year to 6 month type of time frame. True Blue, your jinx. What's your question? On the SED diets, can you include food from the previous phase? Yes, you can. I typically allow patients to include food from the previous phase because if they were able to consume it, that's fine. Just make sure it's being rotated, meaning if you can do carrots in the intro phase and then now you're on the first phase now, and now you can do, I think it's squash and maybe zucchini and maybe some kale. Well, yeah, you can have some carrots. Just make sure it's not done every single day. Hope that makes sense. True Blue writes in again, posted twice and skipped twice. Yeah, so you just wasted your time. You could have asked your question 2 more times. Got to use your time, man. Anita write in, good for you, Dr. J. Thank you for caring so much. You're totally welcome, Anita. You're welcome, Amelia. Carb foods. So what kind of carb foods? Vegetable carb foods, fruit carb foods, starchy carb foods, high FODMAP foods. See, this is the thing. We got to connect the dots better, right? And that's the thing. When someone just has their own life or their own experience, their N equals 1, it's hard to really connect the dots because you just have your experience once. So when I see, thousands of patients, I can connect the dots better because you just have thousands of reps. It's like if you only do 1 rep at the gym versus 1,000, it's hard to get strong. So just like the mindset I want you to focus at, Paul, is FODMAPs, fruit, but then you can look at low sugar, low, moderate, and high, and then you can look at starches, and then you can look at obviously grains and refined sugar. So see if you can connect the dots there. Michael writes in, I watched How to Heal Your Gut with the 5 R's. What supplement or products do you recommend for removing the parasites and candida? Great question. Awesome, Michael. So in my line, I've created a couple of products. GI Clear 1 through 6 are the big ones I use. One's my bigger bacteria killer. It's got like Stimona, it's got dill, it's got yarrow, it's got various berberines, it's got procrasma, it's got Java brucei. 2 is my H-Pylori killer. It's got mastic gum, it's got clove, it's got berberine in there. It has wild indigo in there. It's got a little bit of DGL, and that's my big H-Pylori killer. GI Clear 3 is a silver. I use that for biofilms. I also use it for yeast and bacteria too. 4 is my bigger parasite killer that has burdock root. It's got high dose golden seal, olive leaf, grapefruit seed extract, black walnut hulls, and it also has, I didn't say golden seal and olive leaf. And then GI Clear 5 is my emulsified oil of oregano. Oil of oregano is great for parasites, also great for fungus and yeast. And then 6 is my bigger bacterial killer as well. It's got Tinea spora It's got olive leaf. It's got Pardiarco. It's got it also has French tarragon and Indian Tenispora. Hope that helps. Amelia Wright said, I have access to Emerson. I looked up the brands, and I know there are different forms. Yeah, I like the liposomal glutathione. And the brands, I just mentioned them a few minutes ago. Check out the back part of the video here where I just talked about that. Mo right in. Glutagenics are composed of glutamine, DGL, and aloe for stomach. Oh, yeah. So you're talking about the product. I think that's by Metagenics, right? Yeah, that's just a gut healing formula. So that's good. I mean, DGL, slippery elm, aloe, zinc carnosine. These are all really good healing nutrients for the gut lining. Paul writes in, did you suffer from fatigue and struggle with school because of poor health? I definitely had focus issues. I had brain fog issues. I had energy issues. I had blood sugar and adrenal issues big time. I would put it in the category of adrenal fatigue, potential thyroid, brain fog, and lots of gas and bloating issues. I also had I had some autoimmune stuff. I had autoimmune skin stuff going on. I had an autoimmune thyroid. So yeah, I had a lot of problems. All right, very good. Alex writes in live. Yes, here we are. Creatively Creator wrote in. We really appreciate your time and advice. You're totally welcome. Thank you so much. Let me give a little Facebook love, y'all. Why didn't you become a holistic GP? You have so much knowledge to give. Because I am a holistic functional medicine doctor. If you become a holistic medical doctor in the medical field, you are absolutely handcuffed to practice the standard of care if you're going to be in a conventional setting. So you have increased chance of lawsuit, and you have 3 or 4 more years in residency where you're basically learning things that you don't want to do anyway. So it's a combination of time, which translates to money because then you're not working or helping people for 4 years in a functional medicine capacity. And then number 2, you're hamstrung with having to practice your standard of care, meaning someone comes in, you don't prescribe the ibuprofen, right, or the Immudex for the headache, you can be found liable for not practicing standard of care in a conventional setting. So in the end, it's the way I went. I think it was the most efficient. And is having bulletproof coffee breaking a fast? Technically, Dr. Rhonda Patrick has talked about this, where she says having coffee technically is not intermittent fasting. But if you listen to Dave Asprey, he talks about the bulletproof coffee, at least is a modified kind of protein sparing fast. And if you're using like collagen peptides, those tend to be more ketogenic amino acids. So in general, you can at least do a modified protein sparing fast even while you're doing bulletproof coffee. Christy writes in, thoughts on EBV reactivation? Yeah, I mean, that can definitely be a concern for sure. I mean, 80% of the population has Epstein-Barr virus. And what we'll do is we'll run blood work to see, we'll run the nuclear antigen for EBV, the viral capsid antigen, and the early antigen. If we see any IgMs increase, that's a sign that there could be a reactivation. Or if we see an early antigen, either IgG or IgM, that could be one too. And we may use various compounds like silver or reishi or berberines, or we may even use monolaurin at very high doses, and that can be real helpful to getting the virus under control. Big issue, though, is make sure the gut's working good. 80% of the immune system's in the gut. So if you have poor gut health, that's going to be where your immune system will get weaker, and you could have a more reactivation because of a weakened gut that's affecting your immune system. Thomas writes in, blood pressure was 148 over 105. What can I do to lower it? Depends, right? Of course, like assumption is diet is good. Assumption is water is good and you're not consuming any sugary beverages, that you have your exercise dialed in, not too much, not too little, sleep is dialed in. So with all those assumptions kind of there, making sure carbohydrates are down, meaning less than 15 grams of fructose per day, good protein and good fat. I mean, you can do magnesium is a great one. Adequate levels of potassium are helpful. And then you can get your adrenals looked at. High levels of catecholamine and cortisol can definitely increase stimulation of the heart, but potassium, magnesium are going to be good. And there's some really good blood pressure formulas out there that have some pretty good blood pressure kind of modulating effects. I'll list off a couple of these compounds. I don't have them memorized, but let me just give you a little bit of intel on that for you. Okay. Yeah, so here's a good formula here by Herb Farm. It's got some good herbs in there. It's got olive leaf. And again, olive leaf is in one of my big gut killers. So That's how the gut is connected to blood pressure. Olive leaf is really good. It can help with gut bacteria. It helps modulate the immune system. Mistletoe is really good. Bean pod, linden flower, and hawthorn. Hawthorn is excellent. It really helps relax the heart too. It really helps decrease stroke volume, relaxes the heart. All right. Mohit writes in, thanks, Dr. J, 2 years or less for recovery from arthritic autoimmune. It's very encouraging. Yes, I mean, if you have autoimmune and it's arthritic, and you got to get to the underlying issue. So make sure that diet's dialed in. Make sure you look deep at the gut. That's so important. All right, let's see if True Blue actually doesn't waste his or her time on her question again. What do you recommend for a high CA125 test? Ultrasound shows no cysts. So CA125 is a cancer antigen, I think for breast cancer, if I remember correctly. Ultrasound shows no cysts. So I am trying to reduce estrogen and taking DIM and other suggestions. Yeah, so I mean, DIM is great. You can also do topical iodine and a little bit of iodine internally. That really helps metabolize estrogen, converts estradiol to estriol. Also, calcium deglucurate's good. Getting enough good cruciferous vegetables in your diet, steam them or saute them so you don't jack up your oxalates too much. That's a really good first start. Make sure your gut and your detoxification pathways are working good. Get a window into your organic acids. See how your organic acids are doing as well. That's a good first step. All right, assuming parasite-free, how long to heal leaky gut lining? I would say 6 months to a year. Depends on how many infections you have, depends on if you have autoimmunity, and it depends on how good your diet is. But I would say with those variables, that can help. Amelia, you're totally welcome. Thanks for participating. Appreciate it. Alex writes in, Dr. J, I have some chronic acute GI conditions, scopes from both ends. Wow. So colonoscopy and endoscopy. Hopefully the endoscopy was first, right? Found nothing apparently. I'm taking prebiotics, pre and probiotics, tried elimination diet. Nothing seems to help. Got to look deeper in the gut. Got to look deeper in the gut. Make sure there's not an infection. Scopes, whether through the mouth or the butt, they're not going to find that, number one. And then number two, I mean, enzymes and acids are really important. May even need to do even more special modifications, maybe even an elemental kind of diet thing. You need a really good functional medicine doc, Alex, that you can work with to help kind of dial this in. If you want to reach out to me, let me know. But I mean, the foundations are get the gut fully looked at, make sure the diet is dialed in, enzymes and HCl and those good things to help support your digestion. And then make sure the diet and lifestyle is tapped out, meaning you're doing everything possible. Definitely get a functional medicine doc in your corner. Low Heat writes in, any side effects for using antiviral herbs for attacking viruses causing tinnitus? I mean, anything could have a side effect, but in general, herbs and nutrients are going to be safer. So when I see tinnitus for viruses, I mean, we could do things like lysine, we could do andrographis or astragalus, we can do reishi, we can do silver. These are all really good compounds, monolaurin as well. Sebo writes in, Dr. J, great energy and info question. Would you cycle fat-soluble vitamins A, E, D3, K2, or just keep taking, assuming average diet? Also, would you cycle ginkgo? Goal is cognitive and metabolic. Yeah, I think you can just continue to take those. That's fine. Just make sure your vitamin A is not jacked up too high. Fat-soluble vitamins can accumulate. I'm more worried about vitamin A, and K2 and D3 are fine. E, I'm totally fine with as well. And ginkgo, would that be helpful for blood flow to the brain? Yeah, ginkgo is great. Resveratrol is great. Anything acetylcholine based, acetylcholine, glycerophosphocholene, citrulloline, ginkgo, fish oil, curcumin, right? There's a lot of research showing a lot of brain issues, cognitive depression issues, a lot of oxidative stress. One of the markers they use is the 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine marker, which I run on the organic. So vitamin C can be helpful. Good antioxidants. Curcumin can really help with the inflammation in the brain, which will help your cognitive function for sure. I look back to my college days or even high school days compared to where I'm at now, it's lights out. If I had the nutrition I had back then, 15, 20 years ago, it would be lights out. Michael Green writes in, Dr. J, could I buy the parasite and candida supplement from you directly? Yes, you could. You'd want to get some testing, though, to make sure you know actually what you got. But yes, you could. Is it safe to take kelp every day to get iodine? I would just make sure it's good quality kelp and make sure you don't take anything too much higher than the RDA. So maybe between 150 to 500 milligrams, just to be on the safe side, right? Because you may get another couple hundred in your multi. You probably get a couple hundred in your diet. So then maybe you're at 800 or 1 milligram. So be careful with going too high. Matt writes in, what would you say that calories actually matter if you're looking to get lower in body fats? Would there be any advantages to some days lower calorie, lower dietary fat, even if that goes against paleo? Well, yeah, bodybuilders do that all the time, right? Like what bodybuilders do in a cut phase is they do basically low fat or lower fat, low carb, and then just protein. So it would look like something like boneless, skinless chicken breast, maybe a little bit of olive oil and broccoli, right? That's kind of like a cutting phase diet. But anyone that's done bodybuilding, I used to do a lot of bodybuilding in my early 20s, you get really crabby, you get really moody. So none of that is sustainable unless you're getting ready for an event or a wedding, or I don't know, you're going to be on MTV's Real World or something, right? Whatever that reason is. Yeah, but if not, just kind of keep it to a keto and just cycle in your carbs in and out. That's probably your best bet. Grandex writes in, what kind of fats can I have? Where did it go? Just lost y'all. What kind of fats can I have on an SCD diet? Having a hard time. On an SCD, you're typically going to just get fats from your protein sources. So if you're eating pork or fish or chicken or beef, you're just choose full fat protein sources, and there your fat is. Jay Pat writes out, what are your latest thoughts on the carnivore diet? It completely cures all my symptoms of dysbiosis. Do you have any concerns about it? No, I think it's great. I've done some podcasts on it. I get a lot of hate from vegetarians on it, thinking I'm crazy and I'm doing the world a disservice. I think there's some people that really have a hard time. Their guts are inflamed and they really have a hard time with any plant nutrients, or I should say any plant anti-nutrients, even if it's cooked or you're in a soup or a broth. My first thing is, let's just see how you do with it in a soup or a broth or a crock pot. If that's too much or you notice a good benefit, try it. I think it's really good. Just make sure you're getting enough good fats and make sure you're doing some organ meat so you get extra nutrients. Organ meats are helpful. Excellent, Jess. Jeff writes in, can I take the digestive enzymes all in once at the start of the meal? Papain, rutin, bromelain, trypsin, amylase. Sounds like you're doing Wobenzyme. Do it in the middle of the meal just because your gut lining is so raw, Jeff. I wouldn't want to irritate it. Do it in the middle of the meal. Lakshmi writes in, my husband has ankylosing spondylitis. Last time you asked to check Klebsiella pneumonia. Could you please let me know what tests need to be done? Yeah, do the GI map test. If you need to order it, email my office or go to my site, justinhealth.com/shop, and take a look. GI map test. True Blue, you are welcome. Glad you got your question in. Anita writes in, Dr. J, I went for an H-Pylori test today and I refused because I had to drink, because the drink showed phenylalanine. Isn't this bad? Would you suggest I can do to rule out H-Pylori? Is there another way to test that? No, phenylalanine is not bad. Phenylalanine is an amino acid. You may be confusing aspartame. Aspartame is a combination of phenylalanine, methyl alcohol, and aspartic acid. That's aspartame. But phenylalanine is an amino acid. It converts to L-tyrosine, and then tyrosine converts to dopamine, adrenaline. So it's a normal amino acid. It's not a problem. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bunch of other crap in those drinks. I would do the GI map test to rule out H. pylori. You could also order an IgG, IgA, IgM blood test as well. Or IgA, IgG, IgM. Yeah, that's good. Alex writes in, God, I feel like I need to become a gastroenterologist myself to have any real impact on my gut health. 25 years of horrible gut health. I'm growing really disheartened. Get a good functional medicine doc. I've helped many patients that have had serious autoimmune condition for decades, strictures, even colon resections, seriously, and they've had nearly full resolution. Meaning if they're on point, they're great. They're symptom free. It's like they don't have it, but if they mess up, they feel it. But either way, it gives you the control back in your life. True Blue's back. If it was I was to check for ovarian cancer, so worrisome, I will use those suggestions and check organic acid test on your site. Yeah, definitely do that. Make sure you're doing a good paleo template. A lot of times insulin's a driving factor for ovarian cancer, right? Let's just go and do a little search on Google right now. And let's just type in hyperinsulinism or hyperinsulinemia and ovarian cancer. Let's just see any studies on it. Here we go. The link between insulin resistance and various cancers, ovarian being one of them. Oh, the association between insulin resistance with breast and ovarian cancer, a crucial relationship. This is in the journal, 2016 article in the journal, American Journal of Cancer Research. Yep, association of insulin resistance. Let me do a little screen share so you guys can see I ain't just making it up. Ba, 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 ba. All right. Here you go. Association, insulin resistance with breast and ovarian and endometrial cervical cancer. And these are in non-diabetics, meaning you don't have to have diabetes. All right, this one says no relationships were observed for prevalent cervical cancers with insulin resistance. Non-diabetic women with insulin resistance had a higher risk, a higher prevalent breast, ovarian, and endometrial cancer risk. So non-diabetic women. All right, so they did see an increased risk of that. So there you go. That's a really good marker, I think, right there. And again, there's dozens of studies. Okay, cool. Let's keep on rolling, y'all. Back to my questions. Okay. Oh, Heat, you're welcome. Alex, you're welcome. Zevo, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Paul writes in, are your licorice drops really necessary for adrenal fatigue? It depends. Only if you have very low cortisols. The enzyme 2,3-hydroxy dehydrogenase 2, that enzyme is inhibited with licorice, and that's the enzyme that metabolizes cortisol. So licorice non-deglycerized licorice, right, can really help increase cortisol by putting a stopper in the drain. So it can be very helpful for people with low cortisol. But if you don't have low cortisol or you have high cortisol, it won't be as helpful. It may cause your issues to be worse. So that's why you got to assess and not guess. Chronic conditions. Are soil-based probiotics helpful for dysbiosis if you can't tolerate normal probiotics? Is your megaspore probiotic soil-based? Yes, that's a spore-based probiotic, and it works great. I like that. Michael writes in, I know there is a fat and protein enzyme. Is there a carb enzyme? Yeah, there's amylase, which is in your saliva. That's the first place carb gets digested, amylase. Anita writes in, okay, thanks for clearing that up. I'll contact your office. Hope that helps, Anita. Michael writes in, at your office, do you do blood tests to check thyroid markers? All the time. I think I ordered 5 different thyroid tests for patients that came in today. All the time. Lakshmi writes in, I'm based in India. Can the GI map be ordered online on your site? Yes, just email the office because some of the shipping stuff's a little bit funky when we get international, and then we got to deal with like customs and those kind of things. It's a little bit annoying, but it can be done. Matt, I'm curious of your bodybuilding days, Dr. J. Yeah, I mean, just definitely did a lot more lifting and did a lot more things to help enhance that area. I just keep it real now. I have a gym over there in my corner. I do a lot more bands. I do a lot more functional stuff. Let's see, today, I think I've done about 16,500 steps today walking. So I just do more walking and more functional movements. Keep it simple. Does blue light really bother the adrenals? I mean, I think it's going to stimulate cortisol, which will inhibit melatonin. I spent extra money making my big monitors here. They're all blue light, low blue light, and low flicker for that reason. But yep, hope that helps. Let me check out. Christy writes in, SIBO, Candida on 5 antibiotics. Now I can't get out of bed. Oh my gosh. Yeah, antibiotics really damage the mitochondria, Christy. EBV reactivation, yeah, they damage the mitochondria and they weaken the immune system. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on. Where to go from there? Man, it's so hard because I need to know make sure your diet's dialed in. I would make sure your hormones are looking good. I mean, obviously, if you're a female and you have a lot of PMS issues, get your hormones and your adrenals dialed in. Make sure there's no thyroid issue. At least get the borderline nutrients for energy dialed in, right? B vitamins, those type of nutrients are important. Of course, your good minerals, selenium, just a really good really good digestive support, really get the diet dialed in, really get sleep dialed in. Don't over exercise. Make sure you feel good after your exercise. Start there. How often should you retest your GI map? If you're relatively healthy, once a year is fine. Do I have any food intolerances? I eat relatively paleo 95% of the time, autoimmune paleo about 80% of the time. I'll do a little bit of nuts, a little bit of seeds. I'll do eggs maybe once a week. Like tonight we did like a stir fry. Like we did, my wife cooked up a whole bunch of vegetables and we did cauliflower rice. We did a little coconut aminos and then some coconut oil. And that was my dinner. And I'm going to go have a kombucha, maybe a 90% dark chocolate row or two before I go settle down. I got Billions in the queue. Love that show. Going through that right now. Okay. Michael writes in, high symptoms of cortisol doesn't mean underlying infection. Could mean any type of physical, chemical, or emotional stress, Michael. Hope that helps. All right, guys, let me see. Last question here. If I have candida and adrenal fatigue, I got offered a prescription for Vyvanse. That's going to be Adderall to help me focus while finishing school. Is it going to feed the candida? Is it going to make my adrenals worse? It definitely will. It's basically pharmaceutical speed or cocaine, right? It's a methamphetamine, so it will stimulate the crap out of your adrenals. It's trying to basically take a horse that is tired and whip it to perform better versus give it a night's sleep and good food. You're better off getting your diet dialed in, get your B vitamins, get your nutrients for your brain, get adrenal adaptogens, get your sleep going, get all those cognitive things dialed in first. I've done podcasts on how to improve cognitive performance. So take a look at some of those podcasts. All right, y'all. Great chatting with y'all. Have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. CST. Look forward to seeing y'all then. Take care. Have an awesome night. Thumbs up, share, comments below. Want to hear your thoughts. Take care, guys. Thanks. Bye, y'all.